off of it that I can never see.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our general government meeting, which I think is what we've got going on. And if we could have a roll call, please.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Jaquez. Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Smisher. Here. Smisher. Councilmember Brandon Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you for that. And so the subject that we're going to be talking about tonight are water billing notices and a use tax update. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to Tammy.
Okay, so as Mayor Pro Tim Hamrick mentioned, tonight we're going to be discussing our utility billing notice and then our use tax. Sorry about that. So what our proposed changes include is it aligns basically the ordinance with our process. During the 2020 budget hearing, we discussed that we needed to change our process in the way of how we notified people for disconnecting and some and at that point, we were trying to establish a new procedure. And then we also did realize that there were some changes that needed to happen immediately to get us in compliance with the Colorado Revised Statutes as it relates to penalties. And so those items have already been put in place. And so one of those was that we needed to have a 5-day grace period. So bills are always due the 25th, and so if you don't pay your bill by the 25th, you don't get that that penalty until it's 5 days late. And then after the 5th day, we go ahead and issue a red letter and charge you the penalty. And then we also wait, and in that letter, it gives you, I think it is 14 days to pay. If you're not paying at that point, then we issue a actual disconnect or door hanger that goes out, and then you have 3 days before you're shut off. So this month, we will be issuing the door hangers on the 14th, and then doing physical disconnections on the 17th. And so we do have that notice period in there. So the draft ordinance you have just aligns our process with, gets the ordinance and the process in alignment and gets us in compliance with state statute. Okay, questions?
Just real quick. I see the $20 past due or greater. What's that or greater?
So if you have a balance past due of $20 or more, so if you owe $20
Okay.
or $100, you're going to get a penalty. Before, it was if you owed $10 or more, you were assessed a penalty. So to get in compliance, we had to change that threshold of when we were starting the penalty.
Okay.
And then we also have, I have copies of the bills if anybody would like to see the way the bills look, just in case you don't get a physical copy of the bill in the mail. So I can come up and hand those to you if you'd like that. Hold on.
Sure.
I did white out personal information on it, so.
Absolutely.
It's not a Jane Doe.
Thank you.
Tammy, I have a question that's slightly off topic, but I'm curious, post-COVID-19, I know we had some flexibility during COVID with people getting behind on their water bills, just to give, some grace under the difficult circumstances. Where are we at now with our past due notices?
So during COVID, we did start sending out, so that red letter that you see, we'd modified it and it had changed at that point where it was a reminder saying, you haven't paid your bill, pay it by this date. And so that's what we had done at that point. And then towards the beginning of the year, we started putting out notice saying that we would be starting disconnections. And that if you were having problems paying your bills, to reach out to us, and that we would work out a payment arrangement with you. We do have individuals that did approach us, and we did issue payment arrangements. And so anybody that did reach out, we did work with them. And
So as long as they're making payments toward their balance, do they get a past due fee, or are they?
if they are on a payment arrangement plan, those penalties are not charged. But if they are just sending in random payments and are not on a official payment plan, they are charged penalties. So it just depends on how, on their specific account.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Do you have an idea, Tammy, of how many people have delinquent right now?
Hold on one moment. Let's see if Becca has that number for us.
I think right now.
You need to go up to you need to go up right up there.
And you'll need to introduce yourself as well.
Okay. Hi, I'm Becca. I'm the utility billing specialist too. And right now, for red letters, we've sent out about 100 or so.
Wow.
On Friday, I'm actually going to be, I'm going to be processing the door hangers, so I don't have an exact number right now because they have until Friday to pay. But it was about 100 or so delinquent red letters that we sent out.
Is that more than normal?
It's about average. The last couple months have been about around that number.
And it has decreased since we did start doing disconnects again, because when we were sending out the friendly reminder letters, we were, what, 200-300?
Yeah, it was a lot higher when we were doing the reminder notices.
Okay.
Amy?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was wondering, how would people know that they can reach out and make arrangements to do a payment plan?
So what we had done is we actually did Facebook posts. We also did, I think we put it in the paper. We had it on our website. And we also put on the bill a little notice that said, that disconnections would be starting and to reach out to us to set up arrangements. So we did start notifying people, and I think we did that for, 2 or 3 months before we actually shut anybody off. So we tried to make sure to give people plenty of time to reach out to us.
Mayor Pro Tem, I also have questions on the ordinance itself. Should I wait on those, or?
Sure, yeah. Mhm.
I was just wondering, with regard to the new Colorado Revised Statute, I was concerned about, Section 5B, because the first sentence says that an initial notice of delinquency shall be sent to the owners, upon the account becoming delinquent for a period of 30 days or more, or in the amount of $40 or more, whichever occurs first. And if I'm understanding correctly, there needs to be a 5-day grace period, and this could trigger someone to become delinquent immediately if their bill is over $40.
Basically, the $40 comes in place, so you see the red notice you receive? Those are only triggered if you meet the 30 days past due and your balance is $40, your past due balance is $40 or more. So if you're 30 days past due, but you only have $35 past due, you will not get a red letter until the next month. And so you're already 30 days past due. The $5 penalty is if you didn't pay your normal payment on the 25th. So that goes out essentially at the time that red letter is issued, and that is when the penalty is assessed, that $5 fee. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. I think we may just need to take out whichever occurs first then, so that it isn't triggered by the $40 overdue independently because of the way that it's worded. But I could be misinterpreting, so of course would defer to our attorney.
We can look at that.
If I may, I just had one other question along similar lines. In the following section C, it states that the second notice shall state the amount due and that water service to the property will be shut off if the amount in the notice is not paid within 2 days of the date on the posted notice. But I think that we're, according to the bullet, the third bullet, posting of disconnect notices 72 hours prior to disconnect. So I wasn't sure if that needed to be 3 days instead of 2 days.
So in the instance like this month, the 14th is on, is that on a Friday?
Monday.
That's a Monday?
Monday.
And then we're shutting off Thursday?
Yes.
So we post it on the 14th, so they have the 15th and 16th to pay, essentially, because who knows when they're going to receive it on the 14th. So they have 2 days, essentially 2 full days to pay it, and then we shut it off that next morning. So it's essentially a 72-hour notice. So I don't know if we,
That's right.
if we're explaining the same thing or
Yeah,
not.
I think the problem is a bit of a practical one because the city needs a cutoff date for payment in order to give the guys shutting it off the schedule. So I think that's why there's a discrepancy there. So technically, yes, it won't be shut off for 72 hours, or at least after those 2 days have passed, but the notice is the timing for the payment for the customer. Does that make sense?
It does, and
Okay.
we aren't, by having it 2 days instead of 72 hours, we aren't establishing an ordinance that's not in compliance.
Yeah, the
with
72
those.
hours is not in the ordinance. I think and I don't want to speak for Tammy, but I think what she's just kind of explaining is the practical time. Part of what we had to rework here was just really how shutoffs work and trying to time that out, because right now the code doesn't really, it's not working. It wasn't working. And so that was part of this project, just kind of to create something that actually worked with the water department, who has to do all the shutoffs and stuff like that. So you have multiple departments, going in different directions. So.
Perfect, thank you so much for that explanation. And I just had one additional, if that's okay.
Well, if I
Oh,
could,
please.
just to continue this discussion, because it,
I have one more thing. Do we still need Becca standing up here so patiently? Do you still need me?
I don't.
I think you're probably
Seems like
okay. If
you're
we have
pretty
another
good.
question, we'll call you back
Okay,
up
okay.
though, but thank you so much.
thank you for that, Mayor. But the statute says that we have to post 72 hours prior to disconnect.
No, that's
No.
not a statutory requirement. The only statutory requirement it's the first two. So there's a 5-day grace period, and the 5-day grace period is before you can charge a delinquency charge. And then the fees are also set by statute. And so we had to readjust. You were charging fees too soon, too fast, too high. So we readjusted that. And so those are the two statutory, but the 72 hours is not.
Is our process.
Is our process.
Yep.
Gotcha, understand. All right, thank you. So, yes.
So my third question or comment was under 1308-225 voluntary shutoff. Item A, The second sentence says that the owner shall execute an affidavit provided by the city concerning the existence of any tenants on the served real property. My understanding is that now Colorado law says that you can't turn off water for tenants. So I believe that the intent of that sentence is to ensure that there are no tenants in the property, and I'm wondering if it might be helpful to folks if we just added a sentence that said the city will not shut off water if there are tenants pursuant to Colorado law.
Well, so it's that's a little complicated. You're right. So there's an implied warranty of habitability, which includes water, heat, all that jazz. And so landlords are technically not allowed to cut those things off to a tenant. And this is an ongoing issue. Canyon's experienced people trying to basically forcibly evict someone by turning off their utilities. And so that's obviously the purpose of the affidavit. The problem for the city is we don't want to necessarily get involved in that tenant a landlord relationship. And if we take a stand that says we won't shut it off if there's a tenant, then we have inserted ourselves. So there's some risk associated with getting involved in that. And we don't really play a role in that statute. We're not liable if we turn it off and there's a tenant. But I think we talked about sending a notice to the property, and we were just concerned that the notice may not get to the tenant may get their mail somewhere else, and maybe the owner picks up the mail to the property, and so we didn't think that was had holes in it, I guess I would say. And so we decided to put the affidavit in place, and if the tenant comes to us and says, you turn my water off, we can provide them with that affidavit, and they can take it to court and say to the judge, basically, there's an implied warranty of habitability, and my landlord shut my water off, and signed an affidavit saying that no one lived there. So that was kind of our thought, to provide something to the tenant without actually getting ourselves in the middle of that relationship. So that was our.
I think maybe another aspect of that as being a property owner with tenants is that I want to know if a tenant is not paying their water bill, because it's really important to me as a property owner that water is on, because I don't want to have pipes freezing and things like that. And so personally, we pay the water bill just so we know that it's taken care of, but.
And some communities, they do that. It's owners only. No tenants are on any utility bills. That's a pretty big shift when you've been doing it, when you've allowed tenants to get on water bills, to shift away from allowing tenants on water bills. But some communities have done that, where it's just nope, you're the owner, we only want a relationship with you. We don't want, we don't want to get involved in whether your tenant pays the bill or not. You're the one responsible.
And that's what we do as well, Mayor Smith. But I do know that with most utilities, that you can set everything up. I don't know if you can with the city, to where it defaults to the property owner if there's a delinquency.
You want to answer that, Becca?
Oh, she doesn't.
She's the one who gets to make sure that all these notices go out properly.
So the owner can request to have notification, for every bill that we send out. It's completely up to them, but we do have an option where we can email them notifications and also send them a bill.
So
Okay.
Tammy, with this ordinance, we're shifting to that owner-only system.
And currently, we do not allow the tenants' names to be on the accounts. It always stays in the owner's name. But if the owner requests that it be mailed to the property care of tenant, we will do that.
And then they can also request the notification at the
Yes.
same.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we're good with that then. And so I think the intent then is to bring this ordinance back before council during a regular council meeting for action. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Mhm.
correct.
Okay.
Well, thank you to the whole water team, and thank you for being here.
With that, we'll go ahead and move on to our use tax. We had discussed the use tax in early 2020, and then we did not move forward with with any more, just because of everything that was happening with COVID, and things kind of got put to the back burner. Currently, the use tax is collected on the construction or building materials at the time that the permit is issued. And then also, if they have stock or inventory, they do have to submit use tax on that. And that's, if it was purchased by wholesale and then they are actually using it personally, they have to pay use tax. And then automobile, it's paid through the Fremont County to the city. So those are currently how use tax is handled. What we are proposing and would like City Council to consider is to not have the use tax for construction or building materials collected at the time that the building permit is issued. And also that would mean that we would not collect the county use tax on the building materials. Right now, Canyon City is one of the few non-regional building departments that collects the use tax for both the city and the county. And then during our research, we discovered that the building valuation data that the city and the county use are two different values. So that means that if you have a permit issued in the city, your valuation is higher than if you have one that's issued in the county. And that just, when we were looking at this, it was just kind of an interesting thing that we discovered. So what would happen is that the construction or building materials would just be taxed at the time that they're purchased. So when the builder orders their lumber package and has it delivered to site, then they pay us, the sales tax is paid then to that vendor. The vendor remits their sales tax to us. Approximately 90% of the materials that are going to be used on a job are going to be delivered, just because the contractors don't necessarily have the equipment to haul all of those materials, and it's a little more cost effective for them to have them delivered. We also would not issue a use tax deposit receipt. Currently, our use tax deposit receipts have an expiration date of 1 year. The building permit is issued for 6 months, but you can get extensions with those. So what could happen is a project could be completed and somebody could still be using their use tax deposit receipt to get materials tax-free for 6 months, because it is valid for 1 year. Not saying anybody does, but I'm saying that is a possibility that they could have. We did do a survey, and it was done in 2020. It was sent out to 63 contractors. The building department did send that out. Of the 63, we only had 10 respond. And the questions that we asked were, how do you prefer to pay your sales and use tax? We had 3 of them say that they liked to do it at the time the permit issuance, based on 50% of the building valuation. So 3 of the 10 said they liked it the way it was. The other 7 said, we want to pay it when we make that purchase. And then we asked how they'd prefer an audit conducted, because right now we do ask for a self-audit to be completed if they feel that they have paid too much in use tax. So 2 said that they would like a mandatory self-audit due within 20 days of the certificate of occupancy issuance, and the other 7 said subject to the audit of the city.
Would that be like a random audit from the city, or?
At that point, that's what we had been looking at, was it to be a random audit by the city. So that's what at that point we were talking about. And then the only comment that we had is that the person said the permit fee is paid and issued at the time. The permit fee is paid and issued at the time the permit is picked up. The permit fee is reasonable based on local areas that have common permit fee structures. For example, $20 to $60 is common for roofing. Use tax is paid monthly based on reported revenue received the previous month. Sales tax is paid at the time of the purchase of material paid to the vendor. Sales tax is not audited. The use tax is randomly audited. The current system makes it difficult to reconcile the excise, use or sales tax, currently, and they said they were currently paying twice for sales tax upfront and at the vendor. I did reach out to a few of our local suppliers. One of them said that our use tax deposit receipts does cause them significant issues, because what happens is they will get their sale rung up and finalized, and then the person says, oh, I shouldn't have paid sales tax on it. And then they go ahead and have to get everything voided out and reissue the sale. Or the other issue that they're faced with is at the end of the job, the person comes in and says, I didn't give you this during the time, and they ask for all of their tax to be refunded at that time. And so they weren't, he was not happy about that. Some of the others, so the other company also felt the same way, that they take a couple of days to get all of the use tax deposit receipts recorded, because they have to set them up per customer, per job. And so it takes a lot of time on our vendors here in town as well. So we did look at that to see, what all it impacted. As you can see by the graph, this is the use tax that is collected from 2018, 2019, and 2020, and the number of permits that we issued. In 2018, of the 1,066 permits that were issued and use tax paid, there were only 2 self-audits done. And then in 2019, out of 707 permits issued, there were 2 self-audits that were submitted. In 2020, we had 3 out of the 782 permits issued. And so just looking at those numbers, you can assume that the contractor feels that the amount of use tax they paid was either the correct amount or a fair amount at that time, or they may know that the use tax they paid was actually less than what sales tax would have been. And then the other thing is that we also feel that it could be that the contractors just don't have time to do a self-audit, because with the 2 audits that were done in 2018, we refunded $2,200. And so that was, if you divided it evenly, that was $1,100 for each of those audits. And so if it's somebody who has a lot of projects, they may not feel that it's actually cost effective for them to do that self-audit, because it does require a lot of record keeping, and it does require a lot from the city staff as well. And just as an FYI, we did have a commercial building permit that was recently paid. It was paid, on the 8th? It was issued the 8th. So that building permit, because it's a commercial building, $196,610.
Upfront.
Up front. Of that, $142,000 was our city and county use taxes. And so when a contractor is building a major project, they have that huge upfront fee versus spreading it out at the time of purchase throughout the building process. And then with speaking with the building department on a residential home, the average permit ends up costing between $12,000 and $15,000. And of that, approximately $8,000? $8,000 to $9,000 of that is the use tax that has to be paid up front. So those are just, some FYI. If City Council does want us to move forward with not collecting the use tax at the time of the permit issuance, what we would need to do is we'd need to modify the areas of our municipal code that apply to the construction or building material use tax. We'd need to notify Fremont County that we will not be collecting their use tax at the time of permit issuance. Our required notice period to them is 60 days. I have been in contact with Sunny Bryant at the county to just kind of, let her know what we are considering. And so the county was aware that we were considering it, but we had no formal decision had been made, and that we just wanted to give them a heads up just in case. We would also need to let our contractors know of the change, and then we would also need to let the local suppliers know that the change was going to happen. So, do you have questions?
Sure, Ashley.
I was just going to say that it seems like when we were doing the review for the 2018 building code that we asked that question just out of curiosity between use tax and sales tax. And it seemed like it was pretty overwhelming. They wanted the sales tax. And I've had some personal conversation with contractors, and they said it is too complicated, the use tax is, and they prefer to keep it simple with the sales tax. So I think it is more business friendly and amenable to development.
Thank you. Tim?
I just have a quick question on if a contractor gets supplies from outside the city, county, and they don't claim any of that, is the only way the tax ever going to become is on the end building for the product?
So if they are purchasing, let's say, a box of screws, and they happen to pick it up in Pueblo, we would not receive any tax at all on that. But if they ordered their lumber package from Lowe's, we still get the sales tax, because the sales tax is based on the destination, so the point that it's delivered. So we
Okay.
would still receive that sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Amy?
Thanks so much for that presentation. That was really helpful. Could I just ask, do you anticipate with the potential of shifting the audit responsibility from the contractors to the city, that would require any additional staffing?
So what we were considering is, because it would switch just to sales tax, and we also switched, just so you know, we switched January 1 to state collected sales tax. And so in order for us to have any sales tax audit done, we would need to reach out to the state and say, okay, we know that this vendor's been, most of our contractors are using this vendor, and maybe we don't think we're getting our fair share of sales tax, and we can let the state know, and the state can put them on their radar. And it would be the retailer who would actually be on the hook for the audit to make sure they were collecting properly. As far as the contractor paying their fair share, we are, based on having the majority of the materials delivered, just because, the lumber package, your trusses, your roofing materials, we feel that we will capture the majority of the taxes owed to us at the time of delivery. And so we feel that it's a fair trade. I don't think that we're going to end up losing more in use tax by switching to sales tax. I think they should be probably greater with the sales tax.
But I don't, sorry if I may step in just a second. I don't think we want to give up our use tax audit powers, because we're still owed that tax, and the city still has a responsibility, right, to collect tax appropriately. So we don't want to give up those powers. So contractors will still be required to keep all their records for 3 years, which is what it is now, and that kind of thing. And we can audit them if we feel like, they, for some reason, weren't paying their sales tax somewhere or something.
Right.
Well, that would be kind of where that, if there was a suspicion, or if randomly you're gonna just choose, a certain number to audit, that they needed to have the documentation of what was spent and where.
Correct. And the majority of contractors will have all of their receipts based on, based by project. So most of them could go ahead and provide that to us if we did feel that we needed to audit them. One other thing, that switching it based on actual point of sale is that right now we adjust our values twice a year based on the national averages, where now if somebody is going and buying, let's say, a metal building and paying tax on it, they're going to pay less sales tax than they would have in the use tax, because that's one of the areas where we have had people come back and want to do a self-audit. And, of course, we allow them to submit those. But those have been the ones that when we've seen self-audits, has been, more so on those, just because the building valuation data doesn't necessarily line up.
More questions? So I do have a couple. Did the county have a reaction to the potential of us not collecting their use tax?
No, they currently collect their sales tax on the county-issued permits. We would still continue to send all of our permits that were issued over to them. I know that Kathy had experience with this when the city did not collect use tax during a period, but the county was still collecting. And so Kathy had experience with how that had happened.
Okay. And so the situation is that if a contractor that's going to build something within the city, under the current system, would come in for a building permit, and at that time, based on an estimate of the total construction costs, we would use that valuation at a discount, 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
To estimate what their tax should be on those materials. And that's assuming materials purchased.
Correct.
Okay. And so if they overpay, of course, they want to do the self-audit so that they can get a rebate. But if they underpay, there's no, and so the trigger for the self-audit is just that self, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then in the case of that you mentioned, where somebody was purchased a building, and if we had our current system, explain that again to me, please.
So, for instance, when we had somebody doing a metal building, the valuation of that is actually higher than what their materials had cost, because that building data doesn't necessarily have identified for metal buildings.
Okay, I see. So it just has to do with the type of materials purchased, and in that case, they would want to receive that rebate. And so what we're really doing is kind of doing away with the middleman, so to speak, so that we don't have to have a valuation, that it's just a flow-through point of sales tax that people pay. And so, and we're sure the county doesn't have any concerns about this.
So the IGA is for us to collect their use tax. So what we would be doing is giving them notice that we would no longer be collecting the use tax. They would still have the right to collect their use tax, we just would not be doing it for them. Whether or not they have concerns, they've not been expressed to us.
Okay,
Ultimately, it's not our obligation to collect
and it's
it
just
for them.
pursuant to an IGA. Okay,
So if you got your permit like 6 months ago and you paid your use tax ahead of time and now there's been inflation times 10 of your building products, those those owners are getting a pretty good deal right now.
Correct. And the other thing that by switching it to the point of sale is that building valuation data doesn't necessarily say that you did custom cabinets, you did granite, you did any of these upgrades, where when you do point of sale, they're going to pay the sales tax based on actually what they're buying and putting in that home. And you did make a good point on the way the market had went, that, Yeah.
And I think one thing that she said that really makes sense is, you know, if we see any type of problem, we address the state, and then the state address that contractor. And I like that. Or Ryan?
It would be the retailer.
It's
The
the
retailer.
vendor, yeah. But,
and
I
that's on
mean,
sales tax.
I
Well,
want to,
yeah, the
I want to
vendor,
be,
but-
yay, the state steps in.
Trust me.
They're not, they have good days and bad days, I think, with
And they're very
enforcement,
busy.
is how I'll put it.
But ultimately, we can do self-audit. We do audits as well.
That's why, yeah, we want to keep that audit process in the use tax, so we can
Right.
step in and go to the contractor, like Tim mentioned.
and so, yes, you had.
Oh, I was just gonna say, thumbs up for me.
Okay, so I do have another question. How many current use tax deposit receipts do we have out right now?
So we're on permit 414 right now?
So how would we make the transition? The reason I ask that question is because it looks to me like that we've got a situation where we could be doubly taxing people if we make this, if we just, drop the hammer today and from now on, it's point of sales. So all those people, even though they have a use tax deposit receipt, would we notify, how would we do the transition? Because of the issue of potentially paying double
Right.
taxes, right?
What we would do is we would have to, we would notify our vendors here in town, the local suppliers, to say if somebody does have a use tax deposit receipt that has not expired, you still need to honor it. But if they don't have that, then they will pay sales tax. So there will be a period of time when they will have to honor the use tax deposit receipt and collect sales tax. So the first few months could be a little hairy on
So
there.
it's either or, it's not both.
And
Right.
we would be looking at a clear cutoff date, just like we did for the sales, switching to state collected. So we'd likely be looking at a January 1st date for cutover.
For a cutover. So that would,
Are you saying that January 1st is when we would change to just sales tax, or can it be before? So it would be use tax until then?
Well, that would be, assuming we can have that discussion with council, but to keep it clean, that would be my recommendation. I don't know. Tammy, do you have any thoughts on that?
We do have to provide the 60-day notice to the county. And then, we would need time to get the ordinance through. So, you're still looking at least 4 months possibly before we would even maybe be able to have it go in place. So when you're looking at that, we're already at the end of the year.
Gotcha.
So effective January 1 would make sense. Yeah.
We would have lagging deposits on the books, but not take any more come January 1. I think that's what.
Yes.
So just trying to think this through. Because you can balance the scales one way or the other way. I mean, you can swing either way, where you're either double collecting taxes, or you're under collecting taxes and potentially missing taxes that should be collected, depending on how if we drop the hammer today and refunded everybody's, use tax deposits, and then just assume that we were going to get, sales tax going forward, we would likely miss taxes that way. And so-
Exactly, yeah.
So it sounds like it's going to be a dance a little bit to try and make this work with equities honored on all sides. And so it's the devil's going to be in the details here on this one.
And
Well, and you can think of it similar to how we did the building code cutover, where, we had plans that were in process that were still on the 2006, and we had basically a forgiveness or a transition period where those plans that were approved were allowed to continue forward on the 2006, but anything that came after that January 1st cutover date, they had to go onto the 2018 code. So it's a very similar process as to what we did with the building code cutover.
Is it possible so if we do this January 1st cutover, is it possible that we're creating an incentive for developers to postpone until January 1st?
It's always a possibility.
Part of the balancing dance, right?
Well, an odd thing about that dance is even with the incredible inflation, people are still building,
Yes.
let alone the use tax subject.
the other option we would have, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, is that we could put a use tax deposit receipt expiration date as of the end of the year. And then January 1, they'd be paying sales tax. In order to get their excess back, they would have to file that self-audit. So there's that you could also do as well.
That's not a bad idea.
And so then you don't have an issue with your suppliers. They know everybody comes in and pays sales tax.
Certainty is good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
kinda
And
like
that
that
might be
too.
the cleanest way to do it.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for both presentations, and so do we need to do kind of a sense of council on this, or?
Love to have direction, just to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. Thumbs up.
Sure, thumbs up with
Yep.
Brandon, thumbs up
Okay.
myself. So it's a unanimous thumbs up from the people present. Because this is, collecting the use tax up front is a burden on our developers and does tend to, I'm sure, slow down development or make it, nastier for those involved. And making things easier is great. Getting a system that's clear and with a lot of fail-safes built in, which state collection of sales tax usually has a lot of built-in fail-safes, sounds like a great idea.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I guess our meeting is adjourned.